Chapter 1: The Weight of the Obsidian Crown. King Elias didn't just wear the crown, it felt like it was forged into his skull, each obsidian spike a reminder of the thousands of lives resting on his choices. A perfect list, Your Majesty. High Elder Valerius, his mentor since childhood, placed the final roster of potential mates on the polished mahogany desk. The scent of Valerius's sandalwood cologne was a constant, suffocating reminder of tradition and order. Elias leaned back, the leather of his chair groaning slightly under the stress he carried. His goal was simple: confirm the political strategy for the mating ceremony was sound and efficient. His emotional state? Deeply weary, yet rigid with projected authority. He felt trapped by the Alpha's solitude, a hollow echo of duty without passion. The Obsidian Pack's daughter, Lady Seraphina, offers the largest border treaty and the most stable military alliance, Valerius continued, his voice smooth as oiled silk. Her bloodline is unimpeachable, she is a full-blood Alpha heiress. Our pack's stability demands this merger, sire. Any deviation is unthinkable. Elias picked up the gilded parchment. Seraphina. Beautiful, strong, politically astute, and utterly devoid of anything that stirred his core. And the cost of this unimpeachable bloodline, Valerius? Do they demand more than just our loyalty? Not only that, but they also insisted on a complete restructuring of the Western Guard, a move that would subtly shift military control toward them. Truth be told, Elias hated this negotiation, it felt less like choosing a queen and more like purchasing political insurance. He didn't trust the Obsidian Pack, but he trusted Valerius's calculation because his own instincts had been systematically suppressed since he was old enough to remember. A small price for peace, my king, Valerius assured him, his eyes, pale, almost colorless, holding Elias's gaze with the familiar weight of expectation. The High Elder never asked, he simply stated the undeniable political truth. Peace, Elias echoed, the word tasting like ash. Was the price of a king's duty always this pervasive loneliness? This sense of Alpha's solitude was his inheritance, a heavy, silent cloak. He pushed the scroll away. The speech draft is acceptable. It reinforces the necessity of the pure unity doctrine. Even so, a flicker of doubt, brief and fierce as a struck match, caught his attention. He glanced up at a blurred, towering portrait of one of his distant matriarchal ancestors, a queen whose name had been mostly erased from modern texts. The lineage of the human heart, they called it in hushed, derogatory tones. He felt a momentary pang of something akin to freedom, a feeling of instinct trying to surface, which he immediately dismissed as weakness and exhaustion. The ceremony must proceed. His goal was stability, and stability required ignoring those whispers. What followed was the dismissal of Valerius, but the elder's presence lingered, like a heavy fog that blocked the sunlight. Elias knew his next meeting would only reinforce the necessity of his political trap. Chapter 2: The Council's Whispers. The scent of 3 different, aggressively dominant alpha males filled the room: pine, rain-soaked earth, and stale cigar smoke. Elias attended the late-night war council briefing in the fortress's heavily shielded strategy room. His goal: assure the allied leaders of the pack's stability and commitment to tradition. His emotional state, resentful of their narrow, purist focus, but utterly resigned to the reality that these men held the power to start a war that would cost thousands of lives. Alpha Thane of the Northern Claws leaned across the mahogany table, his voice a gravelly rumble. We are clear on the marriage criteria, King Elias? Pure blood. No half-shifter ties, no human taint. The alliance requires a queen of unblemished lineage because only purity guarantees strength in war. Elias nodded curtly. The criteria have always been clear, Alpha Thane. The selection is between 3 full-blood candidates. Good. Because, Alpha Valen of the Eastern Fangs interjected, his gaze sharp and calculating, we cannot afford historical mistakes. He let the word mistakes hang in the air, a veiled threat against the long-dead lineage Elias had just been thinking of. More importantly, Elias felt the immense external pressure he had to absorb, the weight of thousands of lives. If he chose wrong, if he let his instinct lead, the consequences would be catastrophic. The purists needed to be placated, not challenged. In fact, he knew that any perceived deviation from their pure unity dogma would be seen as a sign of weakness, an invitation to war or economic collapse. Was the Pack's foundation truly so brittle that a single choice could shatter it? The treaty signing will follow immediately after the selection, Elias stated, pushing back the resentment that threatened to turn into a full, alpha-level snarl. He had to maintain the illusion of political superiority. As a result, the alphas seemed satisfied, their shoulders easing slightly as they recognized Elias's commitment to the blood pact. The briefing ended with harsh, final declarations against anything unnatural, including rumors of a certain forgotten matriarchal lineage that had allowed human mates centuries ago. Elias allowed the conversation because arguing would only jeopardize the fragile peace. Soon after, Elias retreated to his chambers, locking the heavy steel door behind him. He unclasped the ceremonial golden trim on his tunic. It felt less like honor and more like heavy chainmail, each link representing a constraint placed on his true self. He realized the real war wasn't on the borders, it was within the keep, fought between tradition and the whisper of freedom. This internal battle had already cost him his peace, and he knew it was only a matter of time before it cost him much more. Chapter 3: An Empty Chair in the Throne Room. The Obsidian court chamber was usually a place of cold, imposing power, but now, hours before the mating ceremony, it felt like the inside of a tense, black diamond, all polished surfaces and contained pressure. Elias walked the length of the chamber with Valerius, rehearsing the precise number of steps to the dais, the angle of his head, the words of the oath. His goal: ensure every detail of the ceremony was perfect and politically correct. His emotional state: numb, methodical. He moved like a perfectly wound clock, every action dictated by duty, not desire. "Remember, sire," Valerius murmured, adjusting the sash on Elias's shoulder. "The ritual is sacred. The Pack watches. The allies watch. Your focus must be absolute. Discipline over distraction." Elias felt Valerius's gaze, cool and meticulous, like a constant evaluation. It reminded him of his harsh training: never trust impulse, alpha. Instinct is chaos, order is survival. Valerius paused near the dais, pointing to a single, specially reserved, ornate seat draped in velvet, set apart from the rest of the council. "That is reserved for Alpha Kalen, should he arrive last minute. The Alpha of the Moonshadow Pack. His presence solidifies the final political tier." The ornate seat was a symbol of pure, unadulterated power, placed in a highly visible, yet vulnerable spot in the political architecture. It was the centerpiece of the arrangement. Maybe it was fate, or maybe it was just a draft, but Elias felt a strange, almost magnetic pull toward that empty chair, a sense of something waiting. Instead, he focused on the practical details. "The guards at the main entrance are sufficient?" Valerius nodded, dismissing the matter. But then, a young, breathless guard burst into the chamber, skidding slightly on the polished floor. "Your Majesty." "High Elder." "A minor disturbance, sire." A strange power fluctuation reported in the lower kitchens and service tunnels. It caused a temporary lighting failure. The guard spoke quickly, clearly terrified of interrupting. Elias felt a faint shiver of unease. The lower levels? That was where the forgotten staff, the half-bloods, the humans, the marginal workers, were confined. It was a world entirely separate from the opulent political stage above. "Old wiring, boy," Valerius snapped, his voice sharp and dismissive. "A mundane electrical failure. We cannot be bothered with the plumbing when we are discussing treaties." Dismissed. Elias watched the guard scramble away. Despite that, the report settled like a tiny, irritating pebble in his boot. He ignored it, trusting Valerius's quick explanation, because his conditioning told him to prioritize the high-stakes political threat over a minor, low-level technical fault. Was the disturbance a sign? A warning? Elias dismissed the thought. He was Alpha King, he dealt in wars and alliances, not faulty electrical systems in the servants' quarters. Just like that, he turned his back on the lower keep and the small mystery lurking beneath the surface, completely unaware that the very power fluctuation Valerius dismissed was the first, subtle sign of Lyra's arrival. He focused instead on the empty, ornate chair. What's worse, he had no idea that in just a few short hours, someone entirely unauthorized would sit there, setting off a chain reaction that would dismantle his entire world. Chapter 4: The Scent and the Seating. The scent of 36 different packs, cedar, rain, smoke, and expensive perfumes, was a suffocating blanket in the Obsidian court chamber. It was the predictable, comforting odor of control. Elias, majestic in his ceremonial armor, strode toward the dais. His goal: begin the ceremony, select the politically necessary mate, and secure the kingdom. His emotional state: cold, detached, running purely on duty. But then, as he drew level with the reserved seats, his progress stuttered. It wasn't a sound or a sight that stopped him, it was a scent. It cut through the thick, rich air of full-blood shifters like a silver thread through heavy tapestry. It was powerful, ancient, almost painfully familiar, the signature of the forgotten matriarchal lineage, yet it was confused, muted by something distinctly human, raw, and terrified. Elias's conditioned political control was instantly shattered by this pure, violent instinct. His eyes snapped to the source, and a dizzying rush, the dormant alpha's true sight, hit him like a physical blow. Lyra. She was there, in a stained service tunic, shrinking into the single, ornate, velvet seat reserved for the highest alpha. Her face was pale, her eyes wide as a startled deer. She was not supposed to be here. She was not supposed to exist. A growl rose in his throat, primal and possessive. Mine. The word echoed not in the air, but in the deepest, most terrified recess of his soul. In the span of a breath, the whole chamber went silent. The allied Alpha Thane frowned. Valerius, standing beside Elias, surged forward, his voice a low, vicious snarl of panic. Guard. Remove that servant immediately. Arrest her. This is sabotage. Elias raised his hand. The silence fell heavy and absolute, held captive by the sheer, terrifying force of his command. His immediate goal: identify the source, control the room's reaction, and protect the girl from the immediate political fallout, because his wolf demanded it. He looked at Lyra, who was trying to melt into the velvet, and knew that his life, and his kingdom, had irrevocably changed. This is where everything shatters for Elias. We need to amplify the primal shock in the immediate, terrifying political fallout of Lyra appearing in the Obsidian court. Chapter 5: The Scent and the Seating. Elias's head throbbed, not from pain, but from the sudden, powerful rush of his dormant alpha's true sight. It was a dizzying, momentary clarity where the political map of the room faded, replaced by threads of pure, ancient energy leading straight to the small, terrified figure in the ornate chair. Lyra looked up, her wide, brown eyes locking onto his. In that moment, he saw not a servant, but a mirror reflecting the vast, suffocating weight of the world he was forced to rule. Before either could speak, Valerius lunged toward Elias, his pale face a mask of controlled hysteria. Sire, this is a disruption. A blatant act of magical sabotage, designed to halt the alliance. You must dismiss her immediately, or we risk war. Elias felt the cold, familiar hand of political duty grip his shoulder, attempting to pull him back to reality. Dismiss her. Deny the scent. Save the kingdom. That was the conditioned response. Instead, Elias stood rigid, his gaze still fixed on Lyra. He didn't move towards her, but the air between them thickened, the silence roaring louder than any argument. The allied Alpha Thane was already rising from his seat, his massive frame radiating disapproval and fury. Elias knew that if Thane left, the treaty was dead. With a single glance, Elias used his peripheral vision to locate the two royal guards closest to Lyra. He didn't need words. They read the command in his rigid stance, "Do not touch her." What followed was a terrifying internal calculation. If he publicly dismissed her, the instinct, the undeniable, primal truth his wolf was screaming, would be suppressed forever. He would become nothing more than Valerius's puppet, ruling a stable, but dead, kingdom. But if he acknowledged the scent, he risked everything. Can a true king trust his own instincts over the counsel that raised him, even if that choice means shattering his kingdom's foundation? As the silence stretched, Elias clenched his jaw. He chose chaos. He chose the dangerous, terrifying truth. He took one deliberate step toward the dais, cutting off Valerius's frantic whispering. Chapter 6: The Unwise Claim. Valerius, trembling with fear and fury, grabbed Elias's forearm with a desperate, iron grip. "My king, you are compromised. The political alliance is collapsing because this girl is poison." Elias yanked his arm free. His emotional state was a maelstrom, agitation battling the terrifying freedom that came from ignoring Valerius for the first time in his life. He saw Lyra trying to push herself out of the chair, terrified, wanting only to flee back to the obscurity of the kitchens. "Stay where you are," Elias commanded, his voice low but carrying the absolute weight of his alpha lineage, directed not at the court, but only at Lyra. He felt the tension in the room reaching breaking point. He needed time. He needed answers about the lineage scent and the truth behind its suppression. This was the decision point, political duty or the powerful, ancient pull of instinct. Deep down, he knew the truth. Valerius's urgent whispering felt like a cage closing. His wolf, dormant for years, was finally awake, demanding the freedom to choose its future. He would not dismiss her. He could not dismiss her. Elias faced the court, his imposing figure filling the sightline of every pack member and every rival alpha. His goal, buy time and assert a temporary, protective claim. "High Elder Valerius is correct," Elias's voice boomed, sharp and clear. "There has been an unprecedented disruption to the ceremony. But not sabotage." He paused, letting the implication hang. "The scent detected is not one of danger, but of a forgotten truth. I acknowledge this presence." He looked directly at Lyra, claiming her with his eyes, before addressing the stunned audience. "I claim this woman not as a criminal, but as a person of unknown, ancient interest to the crown." As if pulled by a string, the allied Alpha Thane slammed his fist on his table, the sound echoing through the silence. "This is madness. A servant? You shame us." But then, Elias unleashed the full, cold force of his Alpha Command voice. "The mating ceremony is frozen. Anyone who harms or interferes with the person of interest, Lyra, will face the immediate, undivided wrath of the Alpha King. Because her existence is now directly tied to the stability of this pack and the purity of the truth." Just like that, everything changed. The selection of a politically sanctioned mate was over. Elias had chosen instinct over immediate political stability, confirming the launch of the main conflict. Chapter 7: Containment and Confrontation. The guards, confused but compelled by the raw command in Elias's voice, slowly moved Lyra out of the chamber. Valerius, defeated in the court, immediately followed Elias to the private royal wing. His new immediate goal was simple: protect Lyra and confirm the details of her lineage. His emotional state, exhausted, but clear-headed and dangerous. Elias stopped in the hallway, turning on Valerius. "You will cease all talk of sabotage and arrest. I have claimed her. She is under my protection." Valerius's composure finally cracked. You have doomed us. Not only that, you have insulted the allied packs and questioned the very foundation of pure blood. War is now inevitable because you chose a kitchen scent over geopolitical security. You will contain the political fallout, Elder, Elias commanded, his voice glacial. You will tell the Alliance this is a necessary purification ritual to investigate an ancient blood claim before marriage. Lie to them. It is what you are best at. In the echo of his voice, Valerius went pale, realizing the depth of Elias's break from him. Meanwhile, Elias ensured Lyra was secured in a secondary suite, comfortable, guarded, but locked. He defied Valerius's demand that she be moved to the dungeons. He was now Lyra's protector and Valerius's enemy. The choice was made. Later, standing alone in his private sitting room, the air was cold and empty of the confusing, forbidden scent. The adrenaline faded, replaced by the terrifying realization of the chaos he just unleashed. He looked at the window. Beyond the glass, the fortress of the Alpha Keep felt like a hollow shell. Because of that, he paced, the fear of war battling the strange, fierce possessiveness he felt for the terrified girl locked one floor above. Who was she? And why did her scent taste like freedom? With every heartbeat, he knew his first act of defiance was complete. He had sacrificed political duty for the undeniable pull of instinct. Now, he had to discover why his instinct had chosen a servant. Before he could move, the door was respectfully knocked on. It was the young guard from the kitchens. He held a small, silver locket. "Sire, this fell from the servant when she was moved. I thought you should see it." Elias took the locket, cold metal settling in his palm, and knew the secrets were about to begin. This was the hook that would lead him directly into the hidden archives and his full confrontation with Lyra. Chapter 8: The Interrogation of Fear. The royal wing suite was lavish, draped in silks and smelling faintly of jasmine, but Lyra sat huddled in the corner chair, making it feel exactly like a gilded cage. When Elias entered, she flinched, instinctively shrinking from the immense alpha presence he radiated. His goal: get the truth about the lineage and her hidden history. His emotional state: frustrated by her fear, yet intrigued by the quiet resilience beneath it. He felt an unexpected, dangerous protective urge. "The mating ceremony is on hold," Elias stated, his voice dropping to a low, commanding rumble. "You will speak, Lyra." "Who are you?" She shook her head, her brown eyes wide and pleading. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't meet his gaze for long. "I am just a kitchen worker, Your Majesty. I slipped in, I was curious. It was a mistake. Please, send me to the dungeons. That is where I belong." Send her to the dungeons? That was her misbelief speaking, the deep, ingrained conviction that she was unworthy and must be hidden. "Don't insult my intelligence," Elias growled, stepping closer. The air thickened. He held up the locket. "Where did you get this?" "It bears the symbol of the forgotten matriarchs." As the silence roared, Lyra's composure broke. Her breath hitched. I found it. Years ago. In the tunnels." She pressed her hands to her ears, trembling violently. "I don't know what you want. I am human. I am nothing." Elias tried to apply the typical alpha pressure, a forceful push of dominance that would usually compel any pack member to yield. But then, it failed. It bounced off her with a strange, confusing resonance, leaving him feeling unbalanced. She wasn't just resisting him, her human nature, the half of her he smelled, was confusing his instinct, creating a shield of pure fear that his dominance couldn't breach. Instead, Elias slowly lowered his hand, recognizing the failure of his old methods. He had to adapt. "I want the truth, Lyra. Not for me, but for you." You carry a lineage that was erased. And I risk war for it, because my instincts, for the first time, have guided me." He saw a flicker of curiosity overcome the fear in her eyes. It was a small victory. In that moment, he realized traditional dominance wouldn't work on her human/half-shifter nature. He needed empathy, something he hadn't used since childhood. Without another word, he turned and walked to the door. He had to search the past to understand the present. His soul answered the quiet call to research the forbidden history. He needed proof that Valerius had lied not just to him, but to the entire pack. Chapter 9: The Secret Library. The royal archives smelled of dust, old leather, and a faint, sweet smell of decay. It was a perfect metaphor for the kingdom's history. Elias ordered archivist Kalin, a nervous, loyal scholar who owed Elias a favor, to discreetly research the matriarchal lineage. He emphasized discreetly, because he knew Valerius's spies were everywhere. Despite that, Elias couldn't wait. He spent hours in the restricted section, finding volumes covered in centuries of dust, specifically concerning the lineage of the human heart. His goal: find proof that validated the scent bond and undermined Valerius's rigid tradition. He found heavily edited histories and deliberately destroyed records. Pages were ripped out, sections were redacted with thick, black ink. He ran his hand over a crumbling text, its texture rough against his skin. He felt it, clear as day, the sense of organized, systemic suppression. He managed to piece together fragments, an old etching showing a queen standing beside her non-shifter mate, notes suggesting a historical schism where non-shifter mates were welcomed for diplomatic stability, not condemned for impurity. The fragments suggested these mates were once called soul anchors, providing a grounding balance to the volatile wolf nature. Her bones remembered him, and now Elias's own historical memory was stirring. As the truth unraveled, his suspicion of Valerius and the council solidified. His conditioned distrust shifted, no longer aimed at his own instincts, but squarely at his advisors. But then, the heavy oak door creaked open. Valerius entered, his smooth face a picture of concerned mentorship. The scent of sandalwood and danger immediately filled the close air. "My king," Valerius said, his voice laced with false concern. "Why are you wasting hours on dusty history? The allied packs are already sending angry communiques. We should be preparing a rebuttal for the Northern Claws." Elias slammed the heavy archive volume shut, sending a cloud of dust into the air. His heart skipped a beat, forcing him to be quick. "I am reviewing the legal precedent for treaty annulment, Elder. A necessary precaution should the Selene Pack choose war." It was a smooth, believable lie, a deflection that bought him time. In fact, it hardened his resolve to act completely independently. Valerius looked at him, his gaze piercing, but satisfied with the political explanation. The elder's presence confirmed that the information suppression, the antagonist's resource, was very real. With every step he took, Valerius's departure felt like a temporary reprieve. Elias left the archives, the secrets tucked safely behind the dust, knowing his next battle would be a direct confrontation with the man who had raised him. Chapter 10: First Showdown with the Antagonist. Elias called a private, emergency session with Valerius and the core council members, the three oldest and most influential full-bloods. He stood at the head of the polished obsidian table, his alpha presence deliberately amplified. His goal: use his authority to shut down Valerius's immediate frame job. Valerius spoke first, his tone measured and authoritative. "The girl, Lyra, is a threat. My agents have confirmed she is carrying a powerful magical suppression tool, a device used by the historical human resistance to disguise Wolf's signature. She is a dangerous spy, and execution is necessary to appease our allies." Valerius presented the fabricated evidence, blurred sketches of a supposed magical sabotage tool he claimed Lyra used. It was clean, concise, and utterly damning under the existing pure blood laws. Elias listened, his hands gripping the back of his chair until his knuckles were white. His emotional state, cold anger and determination. He used his alpha presence not to intimidate, but to command sober, careful respect. "Elder," Elias said, his voice low and dangerous, "the evidence is circumstantial. Because the historical precedents for that device are poorly documented, we cannot execute her based on drawings alone." He looked at the council members, one by one. "The Crown demands a formal, time-consuming investigation. A public trial would signal we are addressing the threat seriously, but a hasty execution looks like panic and guilt." As if summoned, the council agreed. A trial was slower, more procedural, and gave them political cover against the allies. Elias had successfully stalled Valerius's execution plan. Valerius's face betrayed nothing, but Elias saw the calculation in his colorless eyes. Valerius now knew Elias was actively fighting him. Soon after, Elias visited Lyra, the heavy silver locket still tucked into his armor. He opened the door to the royal suite and found her staring out the window, looking out over the stone courtyard. "They won't execute you immediately," he stated simply. "I bought us time. There will be an investigation." She turned, her face stained with tears, refusing to look at him directly. You only keep me alive because you need to understand the scent," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I am a pawn. I am dangerous to you and the pack." She didn't know what scared her more, the execution or the undeniable pull she felt toward the Alpha King. "You are under my protection," he insisted, his voice gentle, a tone he hadn't used in a decade. He left, realizing his goal was double. He had to protect her not only from the outside, Valerius's plot, but from the inside, her own crippling fear and misbelief. The true challenge wasn't proving her innocence, it was convincing her that her existence was not a threat, but a necessity. The political stakes were now personal. Chapter 11, The Alliance Ultimatum. The Allied delegation arrived not with diplomacy, but with the cold, metallic scent of impending violence. The meeting was short, brutal, and held in the high-ceilinged conference room, which felt suddenly small and suffocating. Elias sat alone at the head of the table, facing Alpha Thane, Northern Claws, Alpha Valen, Eastern Fangs, and the grim-faced envoy from the Selene Pack. His goal: negotiate a delay without conceding Lyra. His emotional state, extreme pressure, seeing the immense weight of thousands of lives pressing down on him. The suffocating feeling of the Alpha's solitude was closing in again, whispering that he had made the wrong choice. Alpha Thane didn't mince words. "King Elias, your behavior is an affront to the pure unity. We are 3 packs, united against the shadow of human taint. You chose a low-born half-blood over stability." Alpha Valen slammed a rolled parchment onto the table, the ultimatum. Publicly renounce the girl, Lyra, and choose a full-blood mate within 48 hours. Or we break the treaty, pull our support, and mobilize our troops at your borders. The silence that followed was thick, pregnant with the smell of ozone and sulfur, the scent of war. The stakes were now literal life and death. Can he trust his instinct even if it means war? Elias's core emotional question pounded against his skull. "This is unacceptable," Elias replied, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "I need time to conclude the investigation into this ancient lineage. My word must be absolute, not rushed by ultimatum." But then, Thane just laughed, a dry, grating sound. "You have lost your way, Elias. You chose chaos. Now, choose peace, or choose ruin." They stood, leaving the parchment on the table like a death warrant. That's why Elias knew he could not concede. To give Lyra up now would be to admit Valerius was right and betray the first true choices Alpha Heart had ever made. He watched them go, feeling the cold, raw loneliness of a true king about to face the consequences of his conviction. Soon after, Elias retreated to his private balcony, needing the cold night air to clear his head. He was frustrated, pacing the stone floor. He was alone, or so he thought. He caught a faint, unfamiliar smell, not the sweet grass of Lyra's scent, but the metallic, oily smell of hidden machinery. He knelt down near a grate in the floor, and his keen vision spotted scratch marks and tiny smudges. Lyra. She had been observing the meeting from the service tunnels beneath the floor. As the truth unraveled, he realized she hadn't just been hiding, she was listening, observing, using her background to gather intelligence. His protective urge surged, but so did a new kind of respect. Chapter 12: The Hidden Attack and the Instinctive Save. Elias returned to his study, spreading the battle maps across the table. He was focused on troop movements, lost in the crushing math of avoiding a three-front war. His emotional state was tense, his political mind racing against the 48-hour clock. Without warning, a high, sharp thwack echoed from the wall panel behind the fireplace. A hidden crossbow trap, activated by a pressure plate Valerius's agents must have installed days ago, fired. A bolt, tipped with a paralyzing sedative, meant to deliver him to Valerius before the 48 hours expired, shot toward his chest. Before he could react, his political mind momentarily slow, relying on logic instead of survival, the door to his private wardrobe burst open. It wasn't the wardrobe at all, it was a hidden panel leading to the service tunnels. Lyra, fast, silent, and desperate, burst from the opening. Her body moved on instinct. She saw the bolt, and with a gasp that tore from her chest, she threw herself at Elias, shoving him violently out of the way. The bolt didn't hit Elias, it grazed Lyra's upper arm, leaving a shallow, burning furrow that immediately began to bleed sluggishly. In that moment, everything changed. Elias rolled, catching himself on his feet. His reaction was pure, violent, possessive rage. It wasn't kingly anger, it was the raw, protective instinct of an alpha whose mate had been harmed. He let out a low, terrifying growl, the sound echoing in the stone room. His goal: tend to Lyra's safety and hunt the assassin. He ripped the sedative bolt from her arm, his fingers shaking. He looked at her, his vision momentarily blurring with profound shock. She saved his life. As fire bloomed beneath her skin, the adrenaline of the moment proved her core strength, shattering his condition distressed of non-pure blood forever. A half-blood servant, despised by the council, had just risked her life for the king who imprisoned her. Assassins, Elias grated out, grabbing a dagger. They used the tunnels. I know the paths, Lyra whispered, already focused. I can track their oil scent. They went east, toward the lower armory. That night, Elias realized the truth. Lyra wasn't a protected prisoner, she was his essential partner. His political world had crumbled, but his true pack was starting to form. Chapter 13: The Royal Ward. Elias didn't waste a second. He personally tended to Lyra's wound in his study, the forced intimacy deepening their emotional connection under duress. He used his pack's swift healing salves, feeling the soft texture of her skin beneath his fingertips. He felt it, clear as day, this was not duty, this was survival. Her heart skipped a beat when his thumb brushed her neck, and he felt the answering pulse of his own wolf, a deep, settling connection. His goal: control the fallout from his midpoint decision and gain more time. He needed to make a public statement that simultaneously protected Lyra and defied Valerius. Later that morning, Elias called an assembly of the remaining loyal and terrified members of the council and the palace guard. He stood before them, still wearing the slightly disheveled ceremonial armor he wore during the ceremony. Last night, Elias declared, his voice ringing with absolute, terrifying conviction, an attempt was made on my life by agents of the purist factions. He looked directly at the High Elder's empty seat. Valerius was conspicuously absent. The person who saved my life was Lyra. The woman you sought to condemn as a spy. He paused, letting the magnitude of the revelation sink in. He had fully committed to the instinctual choice. I hereby publicly declare Lyra, not as a prisoner, but as my royal ward, under my ultimate, sacred protection. The mating ceremony is indefinitely stalled. Any further action against her is an act of treason against the crown. The plot direction shifted from will he choose her? To how will they survive the consequences of his choice? Elias assigned his few loyal guards to her, knowing they wouldn't be enough, but it was all he had. As if the world narrowed, Elias watched the doors. Valerius's face, when the news reached him, would be a mask of pure fury. Elias knew the counterattack, the fight for the legal control of the kingdom, would be swift and devastating. He felt a desperate energy, a feeling of fighting for something real for the first time in his weary life. The clock was ticking, not toward a marriage, but toward a civil war. Chapter 14, The Trial of the Lineage. The air in the council chamber was thick with sulfur and antagonism. Elias faced the full council, standing beside Lyra. He was wearing the heavy, imposing Alpha King regalia, demanding respect. Lyra, dressed in a borrowed, simple silk gown, stood tall despite her terror, a quiet demonstration of resilience. His goal, use legal means, the one thing Valerius couldn't immediately ignore, to legitimize the hidden lineage. His emotional state, focused, relying on cold logic and law, channeling his raw alpha instincts into a formal setting. Elias began, his voice ringing with authority. The historical records, those that remain, suggest the lineage of the human heart was once a stabilizing force for this pack. They were called soul anchors, designed to temper our volatility with grounded human empathy. We must review the laws on blood purity, because the current statutes were written by those seeking isolation, not strength. Lyra spoke, her voice surprisingly clear, despite her trembling hands. The true strength of the pack is not uniform, she added, demonstrating her instinctive empathy for the pack's needs. It is in diversity. Purity is brittle. Between them, something cracked in the established order. The council members shifted uncomfortably. But then, Valerius, calm and collected, rose from his seat. A compelling emotional plea, Your Majesty, he countered, his tone condescending. But emotion is not law. He unfurled a scroll, a copy of the purist decree of the last century. The current law, sire, passed unanimously by the council that your father, the late king, upheld, clearly states any shifter unable to achieve a full transformation, or carrying diluted blood, is a threat to the pack's longevity and security. In fact, Valerius's command of the current law was superior. He used the very legal framework Elias needed to overturn against him. Valerius calmly and legally shut down Elias's argument. The council, dependent on Valerius's political network, remained silent, unwilling to defy the established legal precedent. Elias had stepped into the role of a reforming king, but he lacked the physical evidence to reject the political constraints of his upbringing. His logic failed against entrenched tradition. As the silence stretched, Elias knew this wasn't the final battlefield, it was just a skirmish. Chapter 15, The Public Shaming. Valerius did not wait for the next formal move. He orchestrated a large, public event, ostensibly a peace offering to the remaining allied packs and the worried pack members. It was held in the Grand Hall, meant to show solidarity and stability. His goal, publicly defend Lyra against the fabricated history, protecting her honor. His emotional state, devastated, seeing his political efforts crumble, but fiercely protective of Lyra. Valerius took the stage, flanked by minor envoys from the allied packs. We have investigated the lineage claims of the girl Lyra, he announced, his voice carrying easily through the hall. Then came the gut punch. He introduced a frail-looking, paid historian who read from a falsified document. The The historian revealed the truth about Lyra's mother, claiming she was not merely human, but a known spy and criminal during a historical human-wolf conflict, a period of shame and betrayal. Lyra, the historian declared, pointing at her, carries the blood of a known saboteur. Her mother caused the death of 3 Pack families during the siege of the western border. She is not a sole anchor, she is a direct descendant of traitors. The hall erupted in gasps and angry murmurs. Lyra swayed, her face draining of all color. The air thickened with the sudden, violent surge of collective outrage. Elias felt a fierce, raw heat of alpha rage bloom in his chest. Valerius fought dirtier than he imagined. This attack wasn't on Lyra's blood, it was on her family's honor, aiming to destroy her from within. Elias stepped forward, towering over the council. "These records are unsubstantiated," he roared, using his command voice to momentarily quell the crowd. "They are conjecture." But then, he realized his political efforts had failed. The lie was public, and the damage was done. Lyra's world tilted under the shame. That night, Lyra was emotionally shattered. Elias found her weeping in the royal suite. "You have to send me away," she choked out, pushing him back when he tried to comfort her. "They are right. I am too dangerous. I bring only war and dishonor to your people. Because my existence threatens everything you worked for, I must leave." This was the relationship test. Her fear was greater than their growing bond. Elias realized he had failed her, and his shame was crippling. Chapter 16, Breaking the Vows. The clock was ticking toward the 48-hour deadline for the Allied packs. Elias could feel the threat of mobilized troops at the borders, an iron ring tightening around his kingdom. His goal, force the ultimate confrontation before the Allies attacked, legally binding Valerius to a public trial. His emotional state, calculated coldness, the final, absolute severing of his loyalty to his old mentor. He was a king ready to wage war for the truth. He found Valerius alone in the High Elder's private reading room late that night. The room smelled of old paper and the bitter aftertaste of victory. "The council trial on the bloodline law will be held immediately," Elias stated, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. Valerius looked up, a condescending smile playing on his lips. "It is not the time, sire. The Allies demand your immediate choice of Seraphina." "I don't care what the Allies demand," Elias said, stepping closer. "I am the Alpha King. And you, Elder, will obey. You will issue the decree for a public, final council trial, or I will use my Alpha authority to strip you of your office before morning." He didn't try to reason, he simply asserted his authority, challenging Valerius to an irreversible duel. As the silence roared, Valerius's smile vanished. He knew the king meant it. "You choose ruin," Valerius whispered, his voice venomous. "I choose the truth," Elias corrected. "And I will use the law you love so much to destroy the lie you built." Just like that, Elias forced Valerius's hand. He had publicly defied his primary mentor, rejected the political alliance, and set a date for the showdown. His fate was sealed to Lyra's. Elias walked back to his empty chambers. The scent of the coming storm was heavy in the air, but he also felt the strange, wild exhilaration of freedom. He realized he had no proof left, Valerius had destroyed all the records. He had nothing left but pure instinct. He was going into the final confrontation blind, with only his wolf to guide him. He stared at the ancestral portrait once more, the blurred image of the forgotten queen. Now, he needed a miracle. He needed a secret, a weakness in Valerius's system, and he needed it now. His solitude was complete, and his low point was rapidly approaching. Chapter 17, The Unanimous Betrayal. The council trial, the ultimate legal showdown Elias had demanded, began with a chilling formality. Elias stood alone, Lyra forbidden to attend, having been deemed too unstable after the public shaming. His goal, resist the vote, maintain some semblance of control, and appeal to the council's duty to the historical truth. His emotional state, shock giving way to crushing despair. Valerius, however, had spent the last 2 days subtly twisting the knife. He didn't need new evidence, he just needed to use his political control to systematically dismantle Elias's reputation. "My esteemed council members," Valerius purred, addressing the room, "the Alpha King is acting on pure, dangerous emotion. He ignores the treaties, he risks war, and he elevates a descendant of traitors because he is blinded by an ancient, non-shifter scent." Valerius then presented documents detailing the current economic instability caused by the Allies withdrawing their trade support, a chaos Valerius himself orchestrated. He made the choice simple: chaos or order. The final vote was called on upholding the pure blood decree and declaring the lineage of the human heart invalid and dangerous. Elias watched, horrified, as one by one, the council members, the very leaders who swore allegiance to the crown, raised their hands in favor of Valerius's position. The vote was tallied, unanimously against the king. As the echo faded, Elias was politically defeated. The rule of law, the very thing he had always trusted and relied on, had betrayed him. He saw the years of Valerius's manipulation pay off perfectly. The Alpha King was incapacitated by his own system. Valerius, now emboldened and standing near the dais, gave a cold, triumphant smile. "The council has spoken. The threat is identified. I announce Lyra's immediate capture and judgment to appease the allies and secure the border." The space between them burned with Elias's helpless fury. He was hit by the crushing realization that he chose instinct too late. Chapter 18, The Empty Cage. Elias didn't wait for the session to end. He tore through the keep, his alpha senses screaming for Lyra, his feet pounding on the stone floors. His goal, rescue Lyra, but he was now stripped of official authority. His emotional state, raw, surging, but utterly helpless fury. He arrived at the royal wing suite, only to find the guards he had personally assigned standing stiffly at attention. "Where is she?" Elias demanded, his voice a dangerous snarl. "The High Elder gave us priority orders, Your Majesty," one guard stammered, refusing to meet Elias's gaze. She was moved to a secure holding cell. Along with, the old groundskeeper who assisted her entry. The old groundskeeper, the loyal pack member who caused the initial seating mix-up, Lyra's only friend in the keep. Valerius had captured them both and planned to execute them together. Without thinking, Elias lunged, grabbing the guard by the tunic. "Treason! You betrayed your alpha!" But then, a cool voice cut through his rage. "No, King Elias. They followed the council's decree, which now supersedes your emotional whims." Valerius appeared at the end of the hall, flanked by a full detail of elite guards, guards loyal only to him, easily identified by the dark obsidian pins on their collars. Lyra was gone. "I have captured the half-blood and the traitor," Valerius stated calmly. "They will be judged and executed at dawn. This will stabilize the borders and restore order." Elias was surrounded by Valerius's loyalists, the raw, helpless fury turning into a crippling sense of failure. The Alpha's solitude returned, magnified 10 times over. He had sacrificed his kingdom's stability for this woman, and now he had lost both the kingdom and the woman. In the stillness that followed, Valerius presented Elias with the final ultimatum: "You will publicly renounce Lyra, declare the investigation complete, and abdicate your active role. I will assume temporary regency to appease the allies. You save your people from war, King Elias. It is the last duty you owe them." Chapter 19, The Dark Night of the Alpha. Elias was isolated in his study. The heavy doors were guarded by Valerius's men. He was king in name only, a prisoner in his own keep. His goal, find a way to save Lyra without sacrificing the pack to war. His emotional state, utter despair and profound resignation. He felt the cold touch of the Alpha's solitude, knowing he had brought darkness upon them all. He received a frantic, smuggled notice: the Allied packs have begun mobilizing troops. War was not imminent, it was inevitable. He walked to his desk, staring at the ceremonial Alpha dagger, ancient, sharp, and weighted with responsibility. He could accept the ultimatum. He could renounce Lyra, abdicate, and save his people from the bloodshed. His choice to follow instinct seemed to have brought only destruction. He faced the core contradiction: his instinct destroyed his duty. This was the all is lost moment. He hit his true low point. He realized the flaw wasn't in his instinct, but in his initial conditioned distrust of it. If he had acted earlier, if he had fought Valerius sooner, Lyra wouldn't be captured. What if accepting the ultimatum is the only way to save them? The thought was a sickening, tempting poison. Her world tilted when she was shamed. Now, he was crumbling under the burden of failure. He sank into his chair, defeated, washing over him in a cold wave. But then, as he stared blankly at the floor, he noticed something taped beneath the heavy, solid oak of his desk. A rough, rolled-up parchment, clearly smuggled past the guards, was stuck there with stale honey. As if fate demanded it, he ripped it free. It was not a suicide note or a confession. It was a rough, ink-stained message from the captured old loyal pack member, the groundskeeper. He had a reputation for knowing the keep's secrets better than anyone. Elias's hands trembled as he unrolled the parchment. The message was a code, a challenge, and the last flicker of hope. This was the turning point. Chapter 20: The Message of the True Law. Elias shielded the rough parchment, its edges curling, from the dim light. It wasn't written in a pack language he knew, but in a code based on ancient groundskeeping symbols, a language Valerius, who only read law books, would never understand. His goal: decipher the code and retrieve the artifact. His emotional state: a surge of desperate, renewed hope, but a paralyzing realization that the risk was absolute. The groundskeeper, a low-ranking but loyal member of the pack, hadn't written a sentimental farewell. He had drawn a map, a detailed, coded path through the very service tunnels Lyra had used. The map led to a forgotten, sealed tomb beneath the original keep. The key wasn't the location, though. It was the message written beneath the map: the true law binds not to blood, but to the pure choice of the Alpha Core. This was the hidden, immutable law. The original matriarchal lineage's power was not about the half-blood status, it was about the courage to choose instinct when all else commanded duty. The artifact, the groundskeeper wrote, could only be activated by an Alpha who had sacrificed everything for the true well-being of the pack, a king who had reached the Alpha's crucible. As the Alpha's true sight focused, Elias felt his mind snap into terrifying clarity. He knew the only way to win was to use the forbidden truth, the emotional truth Lyra represented, not political maneuvering. Before he could move, he tucked the map into his armor. He looked at the sealed door where Valerius's guards stood. He wouldn't leave through the main entrance. He wouldn't fight Valerius's army. He would use Lyra's way, the secret, hidden paths. With every heartbeat, Elias moved toward the fireplace, using the locket's subtle pressure point to open the old, secret passage hidden behind the ancestral portrait of the forgotten queen. He was leaving the royal wing, undetected, stepping into the shadows of the kingdom he had been too conditioned to see. Chapter 21: Gathering the Scattered. Elias moved quickly through the damp, tight service tunnels, the scent of earth and oil reminding him of Lyra. The tunnels were her world, the true underbelly of the keep, ignored by the council. His goal: rally the true, diverse heart of the pack as his final, hidden army. His emotional state: humble, direct, asking for loyalty not through command, but through shared conviction. The tunnel led him to the lower kitchens, the world of the half-shifters, the servants, and the marginalized. Lyra's people. He found the small, terrified group of kitchen staff and stable hands Lyra had connected with, the ones who knew the tunnels, who knew Valerius's cruelty, but who were too fearful to act. "The king is trapped," Elias announced simply, his voice low. "Valerius will execute Lyra and the groundskeeper at dawn, and then he will hand this pack over to the allies, who despise every one of you." He unrolled the message, showing them the ancient writing. "This is the true law. Valerius lied to us all. He suppressed the diversity that made us strong." He looked at them, not commanding, but pleading. "I need you to trust my instinct over your fear. I need you to fight for the future that Lyra can give us." Because of that, Elias was relying on the very people the purists dismissed as taint. This was his final commitment to Lyra's values. He was no longer relying on the council or the military, he relied on the people Lyra gave him the empathy to see. As the truth unraveled, a young stable hand, a half-shifter whose scent was faint but resilient, nodded. "We know the tunnels, Your Majesty. We can move faster than Valerius's guards. We'll be your eyes." Elias felt a genuine wave of gratitude. With every heartbeat, his new, true pack was forming. He raced through the last section of the tunnel, finding the sealed, hidden tomb. Inside, resting on a pedestal, was the artifact, a heavy, ancient silver locket, identical in shape to Lyra's, but radiating an old, profound power. He secured it inside his ceremonial armor, the metal cool against his skin. Chapter 22, The Race to the Court. Valerius called the final council session. The goal was simple: legitimize his regency before dawn. Elias, dressed in his full, imposing Alpha King regalia, raced through the service tunnels, Lyra's world, to bypass Valerius's outer guards. The scent of ozone and the heavy metallic smell of the silver locket were his guides. His goal, arrived before Valerius's final decree is signed and Lyra is led to the execution block. His emotional state, pure, focused resolve, burning anticipation for the ultimate confrontation. The tension broke as he reached the hidden entry point near the main dais of the Obsidian court chamber. His small, hidden army was already in position beneath the floorboards, ready to strike when he gave the signal. He was entering the grand stage, Obsidian Court, through the hidden door, Lyra's path, symbolizing his internal integration. He was no longer the political king, he was the king of instinct. But then, he heard Valerius's voice, amplified by the chamber acoustics, and with the authority granted by the council, "I declare the king incapacitated and myself regent, effective immediately." Valerius was signing the papers. Before he could move, Elias kicked the door of the hidden access panel wide open. He burst into the Obsidian court chamber just as Valerius was bringing the quill down on the regency papers, throwing the chamber into absolute, roaring chaos. He saw Lyra and the groundskeeper being led in, their hands bound, their faces pale. Elias had arrived just in time for the final, deadly show. With a single glance, Elias focused on Valerius, ready for the final, defining choice. Chapter 23, The Climax. "Stop!" Elias's roar echoed, the sound possessing the raw, magnetic power of a true alpha, a power he hadn't fully accessed until this moment of ultimate risk. Valerius dropped the quill, his pale eyes blazing with fury. "Treason! Guards, seize him! He has been compromised." His goal, legitimize Lyra and defeat Valerius's purist ideology permanently. His emotional state, peak intensity, unwavering conviction, and the terrifying clarity of true sight. Elias ignored the political accusations. He didn't waste time fighting Valerius's guards, he fought the lie itself. He strode directly to the dais, ripping open his tunic to reveal the heavy, ancient silver locket nestled in his armor. "This is the sacrament of the lineage of the heart," Elias declared, holding the artifact high. It proves the ancient law. It proves Valerius is a tyrant who destroyed history to consolidate his fear. Valerius, seeing the crowd's sudden hesitation, snapped his fingers. But then, two guards brought Lyra forward, forcing her onto her knees. Behind them, a curtain dropped, revealing a terrifying device, a large, pulsating obsidian sphere radiating black, silencing magic. Valerius's final weapon. No! Elias yelled, feeling a sudden, sickening jolt of fear for her. It will suppress her hidden wolf forever. Valerius shrieked, his composure finally dissolving into pure madness. And prove to the allies that she is worthless. Do your duty, Elias. Renounce the half-blood and save your kingdom. Elias looked at Lyra, seeing the terror, but also the fierce, quiet resolve in her eyes. He knew logic, law, and politics were dead. Only one thing remained, instinct. He didn't activate the artifact with a political decree. He didn't invoke the law. He looked Lyra in the eyes, ignoring the paralyzing sphere aimed at her heart. Lyra, he stated, his voice trembling with the magnitude of the choice, I choose you. Not as a ward, not as a political shield, but as my true mate. I choose the diversity you represent, the empathy you bring, and the honest heart I find only in you. I choose instinct over every law and every ally. This act of pure, unconditioned instinct triggered the artifact. The silver locket burst with a soft, warm, golden light. Just like that, everything changed. The light didn't just illuminate the room, it triggered Elias's Alpha's true sight to fully manifest. He saw Valerius as a dark, creeping rot on the Pack's core, and he saw Lyra as the blinding, vibrant future, a necessity for the Pack's survival. The magical suppression tool aimed at Lyra shrieked, unable to handle the combined, acknowledged power of his true alpha choice and her half-shifter energy. It shattered, exploding into fragments of obsidian. The tension broke. Valerius's power over the Pack narrative was gone. Chapter 24 Falling Action. The explosion of the suppression tool sent a shockwave through the room. Seize the traitor! Valerius screamed, making a final, desperate lunge at Elias, a concealed silver dagger flashing in his hand, the old purist symbol of cleansing. Without thinking, Elias blocked the dagger with his forearm. Lyra, her bindings broken by the shockwave, moved on pure instinct. As her wolf stirred for the first time, she reacted with a burst of terrifying, half-shifter speed, tackling Valerius from behind. Elias easily subdued the struggling elder, pinning him to the floor. You are stripped of your name, your title, and your rank. Elias roared. You are banished from the protection of the Pack. Then came the true shift. The council members, paralyzed by fear and confusion, watched as the hidden access panels beneath the seats slammed open. Lyra's hidden army, the marginalized kitchen staff, stable hands, and half-shifter workers, emerged from the service tunnels. They didn't come to fight. They came to secure the room, quietly, efficiently, and with undeniable loyalty to the king who chose the underdogs. They were the strength and diverse heritage, and the shocked council saw it, the true unity that Valerius tried to hide. As the bond pulsed, Elias looked at Lyra, who was kneeling, catching her breath. He helped her up, their hands linking. His goal, restore order, secure the keep, and finally, truly connect with his mate. His emotional state, relief, exhaustion, and a deep, visceral connection to the woman who was not only his mate but his savior. Chapter 25 Falling Action, Part 2/Resolution. The three allied pack leaders, watching the entire spectacle via secured remote scryers, immediately withdrew their threats. They hadn't seen chaos, they had seen an alpha king face a deadly internal betrayal and emerge stronger, his power backed by the literal core of his kingdom. They saw profound stability in his true choice. Elias and Lyra, standing side by side on the dais, addressed the remaining council. Elias, no longer rigid, spoke clearly. The old laws die today. Purity is a lie of the fearful. We are strong because we are diverse. Lyra will not be my consort, she will be my equal. As my mate, she brings the grounding wisdom of the human heart necessary to balance our power. With every heartbeat, he felt the final release of the alpha's solitude, replaced by a shared purpose. The transformation was complete. Elias was now a king guided by instinct and the courage to challenge tradition. He had shattered the old, fragile political alliance to build a truly strong, diverse kingdom. Epilogue scene: the new crown. 1 year later. The sun poured into the newly commissioned council house, a structure deliberately built outside the confines of the cold, old obsidian chamber. It was open, filled with natural light, and its doors were wide. Elias stood with Lyra in the gardens, reviewing blueprints for the new council's operating procedures. Lyra was wearing a crown, simpler than obsidian, forged of ancient silver and smooth river stone, but undeniable. The new advisory board is nearly ready, Lyra said, her voice confident, her wolf essence now strong and clear. Mr. Jaren, the former groundskeeper, has found 7 others from the lower ranks who will bring the true concerns of the people to the table. He didn't know what scared her more than being seen, but now she owned her visibility. Elias watched Lyra greet a young woman, a former kitchen worker who was now training as a junior advisor. Her world tilted toward progress, not fear. The air thickened with the scent of wet earth and sweet grass, their combined scent, the scent of a balanced pack. Elias felt a complete, powerful sense of belonging and peace. He had learned that the highest duty of a king was not to the past, but to the true, instinctual well-being of his people. He had shattered the political constraints of his lineage and, in doing so, found his true strength. And just like that, everything changed. The half-blood crown was the strongest of all.